Hello. Um, it is Sunday, January 4th. I went to church today. I had a beautiful day. The day's not fully over, but I felt a sense of urgency about not letting too much time pass before I recorded a recap video about this awesome road trip. So, um, and I prayed about what to share because this is not necessarily like a review or a highlight reel per se of the places that I stopped at and things that I saw because I didn't really plan this trip anyway. So this wasn't a me trip. This was a God trip. So I want this video to serve more as like a reflection of some of the thoughts, the insights, the meditations, some of the parallels that came about as I passed through these states and stopped at different places. So let's get into it. Let's get I'm that YouTuber now. Let's get into it. As you can see, I'm comfortable. I'm home. I'm not leaving the house. I have my robe on. I'm settled in, and I put a lot of thought into this. So go on this journey with me. The trip took place. I hit the road Saturday, the 27th, and returned home Saturday, January 3rd. So that's 8 days. 8 glorious days. Challenging, compelling, thought provoking, very interesting. And I already talked about kind of what brought the trip about. And I've done obviously some check in videos on the road in my Thankful on the Road, I guess, series. And I will do some short videos where I talk a bit more about the some of the technicalities of the road trip, some of the logistics, the roads, the highways, the different states, the conditions of the highways, little stuff like that. But this one is more about like the thoughts, the experience, just the themes that kept popping up. And what was that beeping horn? Big theme, besides the personal theme of just conquering fear, being intentional, seeing a thing through, going after the invitation of God's alluring pull, like going on a journey with Him. It's beyond that personal theme. Like there was this bigger theme of just God's handiwork, the earth, its beauty, its the landscapes, human creativity or human handiwork, and just this idea of how we as humans try to make meaning in specific places and how that meaning looks in different places. Now, it's such a big thing, right? But that's how I would have to quantify like the overall thing. So personally, just hitting the road, I was already anticipating enjoying the drive. Oh, that's okay. I will probably talk about some of those personal themes that I didn't mention too. Because a big thing I was looking forward to was being alone for the whole trip, which had some revelation in and of itself as I was headed to California, and God challenged me on it on my way home to Detroit. But I'm going to go through this in kind of chronological order of the places that I stopped and point out some of those parallels, themes, and things like that. So this may be a longer video. We're already 4 minutes in. So I hit the road. My intention was to stop in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I actually booked a hotel there, but I put in another video, I talked about how I kind of got turned around. I don't think I made it to I-55. Something happened where I ended up 2 hours out. I ended up taking this suggested route from Google Maps, blah, whatever. So I ended up staying in a Super 8 in Collinsville, Illinois. They had a continental breakfast. The hotel itself was blah, blah. And this, again, it's not a review, but I want to point out the kind of atmosphere of the hotel. because it matters. I thought I was in Missouri, like, because I was right outside of St. Louis, but it was still Illinois, Collinsville. And it wasn't it was a poorly kept, raggedy Super 8. Like, the type where the mirrors have, like, the mirrors are messed up in the restroom, where the paint is not necessarily chipped, but like the walls have noticeable damage where they could have touched it up with paint at any point. Like, just that type of hotel. And the main reason I was staying there just so I can get some sleep, hit the road the next day. I slept good. It was fine. I hit the road kind of late the next morning, so I missed the continental breakfast, but it was just cereal and stuff like that. So the guy, the attendant, the hotel employee, he gave me a couple of bananas and some water, so that was fine, but not much to it. And I felt like it cost a little too much for what it was, but it worked, right? And the reason I point that out is because the theme, again, in the different hotels I stopped at, going to and coming from California, really opened me up to just kind of how powerful our decisions are to steward something or to manage a thing, whether it's something small or big. It really does matter how you take care of a thing. It says a lot about what you're offering, and it means something to the people you're serving, to yourself, to your God, your community, how you steward a project, a business, a workplace, a job, whatever it is. Yourself, your health, that's the big one too. So that was Collinsville. I hit the road the next day, and I stopped in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I didn't stay there long. I just wanted to see Greenswood. I wanted to see sort of the neighborhood of the former Black Wall Street. So I rode through there, and there was a store. It was Sunday, and the store was actually open. So I got a sweatshirt, very nice, and just spoke with the owner for a few minutes. I think it was the store called Black Wall Street. I don't know, but it was a nice atmosphere. And Tulsa it was a vibe. Then the neighborhood had a lot of newer developments, some newer apartments. It put me in the mind of some North End, sort of midtownish neighborhoods in Detroit that have seen some recent gentrification. I didn't have a history beyond Tulsa itself. I didn't have the recent history on this neighborhood. And I didn't really have big insights on Tulsa as a place, but I was just lured there by the history of Black Wall Street and how it was destroyed in a race riot in the 1920s. So I got the hoodie, the sweatshirt that has some of the history on that, and it put me in the mind of just thinking of how people do build, right? We had this community of Black people who were intentional about making a space for themselves. How hatred and greed and just evil came and destroyed that. And so a big thought that I was working with as I left Tulsa was, the restoration of God. Like, Lord, sometimes that's how it feels. Sometimes that's how it has felt in my life, to put something together or to do something and to watch it just get trampled on by evil, jealousy, darkness. But even on this journey, as I'm conquering and subduing the voice of lies and fear, I'm choosing to believe by faith that there's restoration, not just for like a community like Greenswood, or not just for a demographic of people like Black people or myself. There's restoration for anyone who will believe in that there is victory over the works of the enemy. And how when we build in the kingdom, nothing can tear it down, even though it looks in the natural. Sometimes that's what's happening. But if we build in the natural, it's vulnerable. If we just do it in our own efforts, our own vain efforts, we don't have anything for real. So I drove, and it was daytime, drove through Oklahoma City, saw the skyline of there, and drove through Oklahoma and drove through Texas. By this time it was nighttime. Got pulled over because the light on my license plate area, I guess, wasn't working. So I got a warning for that. No ticket, thank God. And my next stop was, I think it's Tucumcari. I'm reminded when I do these videos and I try to say a word or a place that it is a word or name of something that I have read multiple times but not heard audibly many times. I looked at this name so many times. I don't know how to pronounce the name of this city. Is it Tucumcari, New Mexico? Should have looked it up. Stayed at the Super 8 there, Tucumcari, New Mexico. And it was cheaper than the one in Collinsville. They had a hot breakfast in the morning. And though the building itself wasn't necessarily nicer than the one in Collinsville, if the atmosphere was better. And they didn't do a hold on my card either, which, it's a small town off Route 66, right off I-40. As soon as you get into New Mexico, maybe they're not trying to waste time with a hold, even though, they could easily require it because anybody pulling over there to stay overnight clearly must be just in need of somewhere to stay, and they would have to fulfill whatever requirements the available hotels gave them, right? But it was just in better shape. There was a little issue with the plumbing and the draining, but it was cleaner. It smelled better. The attendant was nicer. And again, it was an immediate contrast to the one I stayed at in Collinsville. You could tell they did not care, for real. Whoever was running the one in Collinsville did not care. And it creates an atmosphere. And I started to think about that. I'm just staying at these hotels to sleep. But it creates a sense of immediate comfort versus a comfort you have to work to get to, depending on how well these places are kept. And some of this comes down to just how they're managed. Nothing elaborate or complicated, just how they're managed. So I stayed there the night and got up and drove through New Mexico. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. But the Route 66 monument in Tucumcari and a lot of the towns that I passed through before getting to even Albuquerque, they were dilapidated. They were ran down. Even this place, Tucumcari, in the daytime was there was a depressing element. There are people there making a life, making a living of some sort. But the idea of kind of this historical Route 66 and this tourism stop thing, something about it feels so not hollow, dry. That well is dry. And ironically, 2026 is the 100-year centennial celebration of Route 66. I didn't look into it a ton. It just popped up in a few of the places because Route 66 went from Midwest all the way to California. And so there are a lot of sections of it that are still there. And that's a lot of places that I stopped. And it came up in several of those places, this idea of the centennial, 100 years, right? And this place is no way that beyond this 100-year mark, these towns, these areas, these places can make anything powerfully meaningful out of Route 66 or this version of American tourism. Though there were a lot of tourists at these places, even in January, even though the weather was mild. It was cold in some places, but compared to Detroit, everywhere except Indiana and Ohio was mild and sunny and nice. But yeah, and you could tell there was a lot of lack and loss because there were a lot of, I call them trailer parks, but really it's just campers or trailer homes. I didn't see that many trailer parks, which I realize is the park where there's so many trailer homes that it's a whole area. But there were a lot of campers and trailer homes and just these sad looking beat up towns, especially in New Mexico, till you get to about Albuquerque, which is nicer, obviously, right? You could tell there's a little more money there in that city, or at least off the highway, nicer homes in the hills and things of that sort. But compared to the beauty of the mountains, the desert sky, the sunset, all of that, even the roads in New Mexico. Oh, the I-40 in New Mexico was beat up. I also stopped at this place called Flying Sea Ranch off I-40 on exit 234 for gas, and because their billboards leading up to it were hilarious. I'll get into that in a different video, but hilarious. Basically, they had everything. Each billboard you pass said, "Stop here. We have everything. Guy stuff, girl stuff, moccasins, shirts, shoes. We have everything. Food. We have everything." Like, just sign it. It had to be at least 30 billboards leading up to this place, which was on a long stretch of I-40 where it really wasn't a lot of stuff at. So you were driving for a while before you got there, and you were going to be driving for a while again before you got anywhere else. So I stopped there, and I got a keychain. I wanted a keychain for Flying Sea Ranch because I'm like, that's what made me laugh, was reading the dang on billboards. But I got my gas, used the restroom, and got a Route 66 keychain. The billboards were ugly. The store itself was unimpressive. They did not compare, and something about even the items in the store, the moccasins, all that, just seemed like a cheap residual relic of a richer culture and a lost time. It really felt like we were consuming a dead past, a ghost. That's what it felt like and looked like. And because the views, the land itself was so magnificent. Just this human effort to make a dollar, make a life, make a moment based on highways, roads, history, like I said, relics of a culture that most of us don't relate to. This is what we do as humans. We are surrounded by the glory of God, and without his glory, or without surrendering to his glory, we just do these pale, what is that word? About, like, not a knockoff, but it'll come to me in Jesus' name. Counterfeits. Yeah, like a pale comparison, a counterfeit of his glory, our own effort to try to really make that happen. So, like in Tucumcari, they had this hideous Route 66 monument, huge, but whoever put it together, like, you could tell that maybe they were trying to mimic it off the dual exhaust of an old 60s hot rod or something. I don't know, but it's ugly, right? That's an opinion. But the fact is, in the backdrop of this land, holding on to this human traditional culture, trying to create something out of that, just, it looks like a ball dropped the ball. But it looks also like reaching for something, aspiring for something, and trying to find meaning, try to put your finger on something or capture what has already faded away. Because I wasn't there, but I know the days of the 50s to 60s and that Route 66 area were more glorious, especially for these towns, than these days, because there was no I-40. Route 66 was intact. You had to go through these places. These places were booming decades ago. And so you see, like, the Route 66 monument in Tucumcari. You see the Flying Sea Ranch. You see the watered down Native American and Mexican culture just to make a buck, to make a life. It just feels so cheap. It really does. So, drove through there, New Mexico. Well, actually, I got my light fixed. I fixed a little license plate light at a AutoZone in Tucumcari. Talked to a nice gentleman there. He helped me out. I got the little light bulb. Had to figure out how to really wiggle that thing off. And the guy at the store was former law enforcement, so he was saying, and maybe it was a Texas thing, that the warning was not just for the light being out, but for the temporary plate being in the window. Because it said that part of the ticket was for obscured plates. But he was saying if the plates are not obscured, then it really should have only been for the light. And if the light is fixed, you should be fine. But I intentionally decided when I drove back that I would be driving through Texas in the daytime. And I'll get to Texas in a minute, because I drove through it at night, got pulled over for the light not working, fixed the light in Arizona, and decided I'm not going to put the temporary plate, like, I'm not going to try to figure out how to get a plastic wrap and put the temporary plate on the actual section for the license plate. I was just going to trust in God. But By this time it's getting dark. I made it through, got to Arizona. Oh no, Gallup. What? Gallup, New Mexico. I stopped there at a Safeway to get some vegetable drinks, some green drinks. Because again, finding vegetables on a road trip, like all these gas stations, these huge places, these Loves and Mavericks and Phillips 66s and TAs and all these places, they had sandwiches, burgers, food, taquitos, all the chips, all the beverages, McDonald's, Subways, A&W, not a vegetable in sight. Not nary a green leaf. Not nary a cucumber or nothing. So I stopped at the Safeway in Gallup because it was right off the highway. And man, huge Native American community, very obvious. I know nothing about this town when I stopped here. It's bigger than Tucumcari. It's not as big as Albuquerque, but the drug addicts. As soon as you pull off the highway, and you could tell that people are trying to take pride in sort of just these places, but you can just see the human decay. And the glory days of America passed away, and the indigenous richness just watered down. The grips of addiction and poverty in a different way than addiction and poverty looks like here in Detroit, because we have our own variety of it, and it looks different there. But the backdrop, though, of this beautiful landscape and these mostly untouched places, to see it felt more pronounced than it does in a city, in Detroit or in Chicago, because I lived in Chicago for a few years. Of course, addiction, poverty there. Completely different feeling on this road trip, seeing this duality. So, got my green drinks, walked to my car. The manager of the Safeway and security of the Safeway was outside shooing away an addict who was in the parking lot. I don't know if maybe they thought she was stealing in the store. She was cussing them out as she was leaving. And most of these people appeared to be Native American, but she was clearly an addict. Not just homeless or derelict, she was an addict. So they were shooing her away. You could tell they want to keep the parking lot and the establishment just safe and pleasant for the customers. And obviously not have nobody stealing if they thought she was stealing, but because the people were around her. But oh my goodness, it was just interesting. So I get out of there, driving through Arizona. Sunset was absolutely breathtaking. Absolutely breathtaking. But it's nighttime. I stopped at Flagstaff, Arizona, just to get some gas and figure out what I was really going to do next. Cool town, different vibe, very cool. I could tell I was somewhere where there was a lot more money happening and a more booming type of tourism that was still sustaining it, because it didn't seem like it was relying on the glory days. There was something present and current about this place. I had no idea what it was at the moment. It was just clear that it was something. Turns out it's a big location for like skiing. Like, you're really connected to a lot of options. You can go up north to see the Grand Canyon. You're not that far from skiing mountains. There's like a year-round tourism culture, but it's also a cool town. I think there's a university near there. In my brief lookings up of it, right? So a cleaner in general. I didn't see an addict. It was nighttime, but still I didn't see an addict. I didn't see a homeless person. So that tells you something. You're in a place with some money. Still a lot of tourism, but the tourism is current. It is thriving. It's not holding on to the past per se. So that felt obvious. But there was still just this sense of vanity, right? And I decided I would stop in Williams, Arizona. Why did I decide to stop? I forget why I even decided to stop there. Oh, yeah, because I thought I was going to stay there or look for somewhere nearby and see about maybe going to the Grand Canyon in the morning. I stayed at a place called the Canyon Motel and RV Park, and I went to grab something to eat at a place called Nanny's Tacos. This Canyon Motel and RV Park was more expensive than the Collegeville Super 8, more expensive than the other Super 8. Cheap for the area, but it was really one of the few things that was available. And when I say you could tell that the people running that was trying to get away with the bare minimum, I stayed in like a cozy cabin, I think it was called. It was dirty. That's not necessarily the sheets. And I checked the beds and all these places. I did all that stuff, so I'm not going to run down those details. But like the fire, the smoke detector was dangling from the wall. The little shelf in the bathroom was beat up and dirty. The walls were in desperate need of painting touch-ups. The furniture was dirty. I mean, like the chairs at the table and things like that. There was a piece of cardboard behind the headboard. And without trying to explore why, I'm like, I just said my prayers, check the bed, all that stuff, use my lavender essential oils. But yeah, the bare minimum. The bare minimum. And in the reviews, you can see people saying it is not very clean for Williams, Arizona. So basically, probably the other motels, because there are a lot of motels. And this was also a place that was right on historic Route 66. So they were really diving into that, but they were still close to Flagstaff, but probably cheaper than Flagstaff, smaller than Flagstaff, still close to the Grand Canyon. You can just tell when the people who own or manage a place are just trying to make money and not trying to spend money and not trying to do too much. Because it was a pretty big place. Like they had cabins, they had the RV park, they had these other little small trailer cabins, and the front desk was only open to certain hours. They gave you this little letter explaining what they do and don't do, like F you if you need these things we don't do. Bathroom beat up. Just raggedy, y'all. Again, not like a Roach Motel raggedy, not like a hotel off 8 Mile raggedy, like, because it's still a tourist location. It's not a dive. It's not, a place where local, well, who knows, but you could tell they're making this money off of passers through, not necessarily a locally derelict community of addicts or people down on their luck. But they didn't care about those tourists. And again, my comfort is in Christ. But the way these places are kept up, the hotel specifically, did create this, again, comparison of comforts that are easier to get into versus you having to sort of work around the mess to just get comfortable and settle down. And I'm learning something from that. I'm learning from that. Because just because this place is big on tourism doesn't mean you can just take advantage of the fact that somebody needs somewhere to lay their head down. So I'm going to do my reviews. I'm going to do my Google reviews, all my TripAdvisor, all that stuff. And I do a lot of Google reviews. So my reviews, they be at the top. So they will enjoy those. But separate from all of that was just the Lord showing me, like, the little things you do and don't do. Tell God how you feel about what He's giving you. Tell people how you feel about what you're giving them. And it's a felt thing. And it can hinder them coming into the ease of God, of receiving Him, knowing Him, having faith in Him. Not necessarily the ease of life, but the ease of God. You can create cumbersome stuff with that depending on how you manage the thing you're supposed to be managing. And this video, I'm going to try to aim for 45 minutes. So if you're with me on this journey, be with me on this journey. Because I'm probably going to wind down even more. I'm ready for work tomorrow. I don't have a ton to do this evening. So yeah, be with me on this journey. What else? So, stayed there at Williams, Arizona. Nanny's Tacos. I got the quesadilla. They were out of a lot of stuff. It was pretty busy there, and it was almost closed. So, I didn't feel too many types of ways by that. But it seemed like a small business owned by what appeared to be a Mexican family. Good food, though. The birria tacos, quesadilla, top notch. The salsa, I wish they had some chips. because the salsa was so good. I'm like, I know if I could have got some chips. They were out of chips by the time I got there. But it was so good that I thought about stopping there on my way back home. So here you see, again, I'm not going to speak on the Latin American cultures in these places and the growing Latin American population in some of these cities and towns or areas. And again, these are, I don't remember about Oklahoma, but like, I don't know about New Mexico either. I didn't look it up. But Texas, Arizona, these are red states. I ain't going to say that the Mexicans who were serving me tacos at this restaurant were Republicans. I don't know these people. But the irony of their experience in these states and their aspirations as Americans, the ideas that we just reached to, the main ideas we reached to as humans, not uniquely them, but them uniquely in this way, because we all do it. We just all do it. It just stood out to me in ways it had not prior to this. But good on them for running a great popular business in Williams, Arizona. You could tell they cared because, like I said, how good that food was. They weren't just trying to take advantage of the fact that people were passing through. Yeah, maybe they were out of stuff, but they were honest about it up front. They weren't giving people flack. And these are people from all over the world. The two guys in front of me were Swedish or something like that because they were speaking one of those languages. And they were very tall, very pale, speaking one of those Norwegian, European, Swedish, Swiss, I don't know. They were one of those. So these people, they could compare it, but what are they really going to compare it to? They could have served us anything, but it was some good food. So I ate good, went to sleep, decided not to go to the Grand Canyon, and drove through the rest of Arizona through the daytime. Beautiful. And I made it to California that day too. Beautiful. Did I stop anywhere in between there? No, I pretty much left the hotel in Williams, Arizona, and drove straight to Yucca Valley, California. Just stopping for gas in the restroom. I don't believe I made any remarkable stops. And I got there before the sun went down. Yeah, beautiful drive into California. Beautiful drive off of, I don't think it was 29 Palms Highway yet. There was a different California highway that I had to exit off I-40 to get to. Very isolated. Absolutely gorgeous. Yeah. So yeah, it was uneventful though, but the landscapes were beautiful. But until you get closer to Yucca Valley and you get back into the more populated areas, and just it's a style of blight in the Southwest that's just different than Midwestern blight, and I'm sure different than East Coast, Northeast type blight. It's a flavor of, again, human decay and just the frailty of the things we put together with our own hands, sprinkled in with some amazing architecture. The historical element is very different there too, because it's just not as old as the Midwest and the Northeast, right? So what is historical there doesn't look like what is historical here. Like the house that I live in turns 100 years old today. Some of these states turned 100 years old a few years ago. Like Arizona had their centennial in 2012 as a state. It puts in perspective how much development there has been in these different regions and how recent a lot of it is. So a lot of architecture there just looks newer, and we know this, and I'm not going to get into all that, but the blight was still there. These touristy restaurants, you know, that the big tourism draw here is Joshua Tree National Park. So I'm thinking, you know, I'm seeing this, and I know I'm going to a motel that's pretty cheap. I'm just there to sleep. My main thing is seeing the sights. I just need somewhere comfortable and clean to sleep. Clean is the main thing I'm looking for in the reviews, and I'm trusting God. So I'm like, you know, after being at that Raggedy Canyon Motel and RV Park in Williams, Arizona, which cost more again than any of the places that I stopped so far, and cost more than this motel, which is the High Desert Motel in Yucca Valley. I pull up, I check in. The attendant is already nicer and all this, but from the photos and just the outdoors, like I could tell this place is old and dated. Most of them were, but this would be much older and much more dated. So when I got the key and went into the hotel room, I was pleasantly surprised to see that even though this was clearly the oldest sort of motel with some of the oldest furniture of the places, it was the best kept of all four. Hands down, point blank, period. And it didn't have to be. The people who were owning and managing this place cared to keep it touched up and put together, even though it was dated and a little bit tacky, if that makes sense. For example, clean smell when I get in there. So they are really cleaning this place. Whatever smells, at least in this room, whatever smells may have tried to linger in the carpet, they didn't let it linger too long. They were cleaning it up, vacuuming, whatever. The paint, the paint was not a pleasant color, but it was not patchy. It had no scratch marks. It was painted. It was the restroom, the floor was like this older tile. It almost reminded me of the asbestos tile, which I know it wasn't. I think it was linoleum or something like that. But it was like a dark blue color, strange looking, but clean, not messed up, not dinged up. The floor, the trim around the floors, the sink, the toilet, it was all in good shape. Even the tabletop of the desk and a little table with the two chairs. The two chairs were just those. I don't even know if I can name a place that still has those style chairs, but they were clean. And the tops of the desk and the table were a newer granite slab. Again, I don't know how every room looked, but you can tell when the time came for them to address whatever they was going to address, where it was time for them to address the paint, time for them to address the tile in the bathroom, time for them to address the furniture, the desktop, the tabletop. They made quality decisions, though not tasteful decisions, not high-end decisions, but thoughtful, well-kept decisions. It made it easier to get comfortable in this space. And you could just tell they cared about how they were keeping it up. So, and I'm going to go, because the trip back was shorter. I only stayed in 2 places instead of 3. And I drove more deliberately, so I didn't stop at many places on my way back. But I stopped at the park, obviously. The park was gorgeous, even though it was overcast. Not very crowded, which was cool. I got to walk around again without hiking. My goal was not to hike per se, but to see the landscapes, to see the views, to see the park itself and the trees. It was Joshua trees all through this park. Though again, they're not trees. And the name of these cacti or succulents is kind of stupid when you think about it. It's really dumb. You can ask a Mormon to explain it to you, I guess. I don't know. And they don't even know their own history, but this is not a video about Mormonism. They named these things because they saw them, which speaks again to the colonialism and this white ideology about nationalism and this concept of like a Eurocentric promised land, which I feel like Mormons represent better than a lot of other groups. So that Eurocentric promised land notion, and we don't talk enough about how they really spread out and kind of shaped a lot of these regions, especially the Southwest region of America. Historically, the Southwest region. And the name Joshua Tree is a symbol of that, because they named those things, right? They had no clue it wasn't a tree. They probably ain't talked to no Native Americans about nothing. They just came through, saw some cacti or succulents or whatever, and came up with some pseudo spiritual idea about whatever. But to think about these plants and how they not only survive in this desert, but how they are a part of an ecosystem that like a balanced ecosystem that other animals, insects, other life thrives off of. Like they thrive off of each other in this place. They serve as a home. They serve as a source of food for some species. And again, I didn't do deep research because this wasn't too much about understanding every aspect of what I was experiencing on this trip. It was more about letting the Lord kind of paint a picture, thread together a narrative for His glory with where I am, where I'm going next, but with the bigger picture of where we are as a people, where we are as humans, where we are as a nation, where we sometimes are regionally, and where we can be. So the park was amazing, and I could talk for another 40 minutes about that, but I'm going to move on because it was New Year's Eve. I kept it simple. I went to Costin. What is that place called? Because again, I'm mostly eating my own groceries for the most part. I didn't eat at a lot of places, but I tried Sam's Indian food and what is it? Castanadas. So Sam's Indian food was flavorful. The chicken was, again, not a review, but it was one of the restaurants where I didn't try some of the more popular items. They also had like Indian style pizza. And I mean like Asian Indian. I didn't want that though. And I didn't want any bread, any naan. The naan looked good. It was good. It had good reviews. But I just got some mango chicken and some samosas. Good, but not, like memorable. Decent. I wouldn't go back. So the next day I got some castanadas on New Year's Eve. Because New Year's Eve is when I went to the park and all the other stuff. I had a California burrito. It was just a chain there. I was just eating to eat. Nothing impressive. Nothing intentionally thoughtful about the food. The menu, you could tell, was just a long conglomerate, like a compilation of just popular items, regional items, and things of that sort. And probably no one thing on that menu was particularly standout good. If it was, nothing about it was mentioned. Nothing jumped out to me. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they did have some item that was just amazingly delicious that I did not try. But again, it was like comparing that to Nanny's Tacos, and like most just small businesses where the person is putting thought into what they're offering you. I didn't have high expectations. I knew what it was when I was going. It was just close by and I ate it. But I did have higher expectations of the chicken dish from Sam's restaurant. And the chicken was just not in good shape. The chicken was not tender, which is crazy because usually that's some of the most tender chicken. Like the butter chicken, all that stuff, the curries. I don't know if they cook it in I don't know how they prepare it, but usually at these Indian restaurants, it is just some of the most tender chicken you can get. So the chicken was rough, but it was flavorful. Not a lot of thoughts on that besides just that same trend, right? Of just being able to tell the effort that people are putting into something or what it exists to accomplish. So I leave there, drive back, amazing drive. I decided to stay. I drove all the way to the end of Tucumcari Super 8. The end of New Mexico, because that's getting back towards Texas, because I want to stay there and drive through Texas in the daytime. Beautiful sunset. Oh, absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful skies. I'm not going to get stuck there, but the handiwork of God, the mountains, the views, I was blown away. Blown away. So I stayed at the Super 8, the same one from before. I liked the price. I liked the hot breakfast. Good location. The sunrise, like in the room I was in this time, the sunrise was right outside the window, and the window was sort of facing the open area, so no buildings on the road. So I sort of kept that open in the morning. That was nice. Sat outside for a little bit, did what I needed to do. I didn't write this down, but when I drove through Texas in the daytime, and this is the upper part of Texas, like that little square top. The main town or city, I guess you pass through is Amarillo. Easily the ghettoest place I passed through because it was big enough to be big, but ghetto enough to where even if I just, and when I say ghetto, I'm just I don't know how to describe it. There was nothing impressive about my drive through Texas. Nothing. And then it could be that portion of it. The landscapes were not as impressive as California, Arizona, New Mexico, but it has some of the same blight as New Mexico. Oh, I forgot to mention my drive through Route 66, but that was just gorgeous regardless. I don't through Arizona. But yeah, Texas, driving there through there in the daytime or nighttime made no difference. It wasn't a long drive anyway. Raggedy rest areas, they didn't care nothing about their part of I-40. Texas said, whatever, F I-40. We ain't putting nothing there. I can't tell you what I can't tell you. Nothing stood out. Nothing spoke to me. Again, there are people in these places, so I'm not dogging these places because wherever there are humans, there is divine potential, period. But, baby, these are just the thoughts I was having. Some of them are just opinions. Some were insights that were dealing with me. So on this drive back, as I'm continuing and I'm enjoying myself, one key thing I want to mention that God was dealing with me on was how much I enjoyed being alone on the road. Because on the way to California, that was a part of what I was just grateful for, was the solo time. And on the way back, as I'm seeing the moonlight, as I'm seeing landscapes in the daytime that I didn't quite see before, like that stretch of Arizona between Flagstaff and New Mexico that I had initially driven through at night, just all this, God made it clear to me, He made it clear to me that there was an issue, that there was not a single human being in my life that I would have wanted to take this trip with. And I love the people in my life. But I could not imagine, nor did I want to imagine, nor does there exist a person that it would be enjoyable to imagine in my life that I would have wanted to be in the car with for 4,500 miles of driving. There was not a person I could imagine being in the driver's seat as I'm going through these roads, because a part of me is like, I would like to sit in the passenger seat and just enjoy these views, because I do still have to keep my eyes on the road. I can't just stare at the moon. I can't stare at the sky. I can't stare at the sunset, right? I can't stare at the mountains. I'm still driving. Wouldn't it be nice to be a passenger? And it occurred to me, I can't imagine being a passenger. The idea, as much as I would like to enjoy the views, the idea of having to relax while somebody else is behind the wheel, I couldn't, like, the thought alone made me very nervous about having to trust somebody behind the wheel for hours and hours at a time. For the most part, people don't like driving for a long time, for the most part. And maybe years ago, I would say my dad is somebody I would have trusted when he was younger. His eyesight was better, His eyesight is not as great now. Nighttime driving is not his thing. But, and I'll mention my family and my dad's side of the family when it comes to driving the road trips, because I had an interesting conversation before I started this, but I'll mention that at the end. So that thought came to me, that as much as I would like to enjoy some of these views without having to focus on driving, I could not imagine trusting anybody enough to drive. And the Lord began to show me that's a problem. That's actually an issue. And that's actually something that needs to change. So as much as this trip was a gift, it was also a shift. It was also a big shift, because moving forward, I have to trust God enough to where I can function in partnerships, relationships differently. Trusting Him as I go, even when I'm going with other people. Because of all the things that I saw, all the things that I'm comparing and analyzing and picking apart, most of these things came about through partnerships, through shared experiences, through concerted efforts. Some efforts vain, some efforts, not as fruitful as others. But still, most of these big things don't happen, the human part, without some concerted efforts, right? But God all alone by himself made the earth and the world and the planets and all this stuff and the beautiful landscapes and all those things. So, dang, 50 minutes. Yeah, whatever. I don't care. If you on this journey with me, you on this journey with me. Because, again, it was a 4,500-mile road trip. So I'll aim for keeping it within an hour. So Texas was, not to judge the people, because I don't have that. I mean, my opinions are my opinions. They're meaningless. These are real lives. People are making meaning or failing to make meaning all over the planet every day, whatever. But seeing it was like, ooh, I could have drove through here at night and not missed nothing. Still wide open landscapes, just not as impressive. It's somehow not even as impressive as Oklahoma and Missouri, which I was surprised by that. I thought that transition in Texas would sort of have its own flavor, but it was kind of like just a watered down version of both. Not as deserty as New Mexico and Arizona, not as hilly and green and lush as Oklahoma and Missouri. I don't know. And short though, because again, it's that top part of Texas. So driving through there, and I'm aiming for at least getting out of Oklahoma and maybe stopping somewhere in Missouri, which is what I did. But I stopped at Oklahoma City to walk around a little bit. I needed to move. I needed to go for a walk, and I was getting gas, and thankfully I actually found the River Park Trail, which was like a couple miles away from where I was off I-40. Is it still I-40? Yeah, because it was Oklahoma, because St. Louis is when it changed. No, Oklahoma City is where it changed to 44. So I was off I-40 or 44, and I took a walk the river along River Park. Very interesting because there was no water. There was no water, and I had posted a picture of it on here on my. You can go to the community tab, I think it is, and it reminded me how, because I had to look it up. I'm like, why is there no water in this river? I looked it up, and they function off of a dam system. And it was a reminder how in these different landscapes, you have these different waterways, like the Colorado River, very impressive, very beautiful. Would like to revisit in some way, or at least know something more about it. But this river here in Oklahoma City was a reminder of how to live in these places, like to build here. Whenever these people settled and decided to build, and over the centuries, you have to negotiate so much with how these lands function, how God made these places, the hills, the valleys, the waterfalls, the rivers, the mountains, the water coming down those mountains, the clean water, and then how we as humans have really effed up a lot of that by just polluting these waterways and things of that sort. But even the human engineering that will go into a dam or whatever to where here is because I'm from Detroit. The Detroit River is always a river. The idea of seeing the bottom of a river, because you think about the LA River, where that's not really a river, maybe it used to be, and you think about the fact that in certain seasons in the Southwest, in the rain seasons, some of these rivers flow, and then when it's not rain, you don't get too much. But in my brain, I'm thinking of small, narrow riverways, and this one was pretty big. And there's a lot that goes into how we as humans try to make meaning in a place and make a life in a place. And a lot of it can still be in vain, even though a lot of the ingenuity sustains us in a place for decades, centuries. There are random towns, you can look it up, that, have been lost to floods and broken dams and exist under a river, never to be occupied again. There's some places where it made no sense for people to try to settle, where the forces of nature were just too strong. You were not going to win that battle. But watching humans contend with that, and I don't know what it was specifically about Oklahoma City and Tulsa, but I liked the vibe. It's still just a place. Problems like everywhere else. When I stopped at Tulsa and stopped at the Black Wall Street store, stopped at Oklahoma City and went for a nice walk along the drained river. It was a good vibe. Also, the weather was nice for this walk. It was sunny, and I knew this was going to be my last stop of warmth before it started to get cold, because I'm heading into Missouri and then back into Michigan, and the temperatures there would just be in the 30s, 20s, teens. The city skylines, especially after living in Chicago, don't take my breath away because they're common to me. And Chicago has, I think, the second largest skyline, second to New York City, in its impressiveness and its vastness, right? I've never been to New York. And so to see the Chicago city skyline, really, I'm still impressed by it, but I'm not new to it. Seeing the mountains, the hills, the desert, Joshua Tree National Park, all those other things, that was new in a sense for me. I've been to Maui, the mountains there. Oh, Maui was gorgeous. I've been to places. Puerto Rico was gorgeous. But to see the Southwest in this area was new. The Tulsa, the Oklahoma City skyline, again, not as big as Chicago, maybe bigger than Detroit's, a little bit more, much more modern than Detroit's skyline. It didn't speak to me, though, as much as just thinking about this river, this contention with the landscape, with the ecosystem, where these people decided to settle and build. Didn't see a ton of blight, but of course you ride through a city and you're mostly on a highway. The walk there was really nice. There was a couple of homeless people in the park, but people walking their dog, people riding bikes, people jogging, because it was just a beautiful day, beautiful sunset. And again, I posted a photo. And so after walking through Oklahoma City, I drove to Joplin, Missouri, and this was my last stop. At some point, I stopped at a candy factory. I won't mention that candy factory. I was getting gas, but I decided to get some candy too. This one just sort of repeats this idea of trying to thrive off of tourism in a way that's kind of faded out and trying to hold on to the glory days, and also trying to really get some not bang for your buck, but hoping to make a buck off of people's just cravings of sugar. But the last stop after my walk in Oklahoma City was at La Quinta Inn or hotel, whatever it's called, in Joplin, Missouri, and at a Food for Less. Again, the struggle for vegetables. Because in Albuquerque, I stopped at a Walmart and got some spinach and arugula. I'm like, because anyway, and other than that, I had grapefruit, pistachio, stuff like that. Water, tea. I cut a couple burgers, a couple chicken sandwiches. I didn't do a lot of fast food. I only stopped at a few fast food places for burgers or a chicken sandwich. But got me some vegetables at Albuquerque at a Walmart. But in Joplin, Missouri, this is where I got my last hotel. This was the most expensive hotel that I stayed at too. I just wanted to have a quality night's rest. They had a laundry room. I could wash my dirty clothes. It was near Food for Less. It's a populated area. The Food for Less though, because when I pulled up I'll say it this way. how most of the hotels I stayed at, you could tell, were really, really thriving off of people stopping through. This La Quinta, there was a lot of hotels there. You could tell a lot of these people, it appeared that a lot of these people were local. Not necessarily derelict, not necessarily, off the streets, but I think a lot of them were local. Or were from other places in Missouri, or from nearby, like Oklahoma or something like that. And that they were making a thing of being here on a Friday night. Which is like, and these were like lower middle class people. Yeah, maybe lower middle class. But the Food for Less, when you walk in, I've been at a Food for Less before, at some point in my life. I don't know if it was in Illinois, but I've been at a Food for Less. And for the most part, it put me in mind of a Safeway, a Kroger, just a regular grocery store. But when you walk in this Food for Less in Joplin, Missouri, there's no produce in sight. And something again about the people here, though lower middle class, predominantly white, and I won't necessarily say there was I didn't notice anybody homeless. There wasn't an obvious addict population just roaming the streets. They seemed to have a little more money, but there was something so low life about the vibe in this place. Not low life like worthless, no. Because all life is worth the same. I'm not going to try to make any point that's suggesting that somehow somebody's lives are somehow more or less valuable or important than others. All lives in all these places hold equal immense potential and value. I say low life in a sense of small. There's something very small about these people's lives. Even though this place was cleaner, more well-to-do, more established than some of the other places I've visited, predominantly white, but very, very low life. Very small life. These are my insights just off what I saw. This is, again, not to quantify any group of people in any place, because I can't do that. And this is the point of this drive and this journey, was not even to attempt to quantify a person's life or the life of people in any region or city or area or state, because I simply cannot, should not, and hold no divine purpose to do that. So I'm not going to attempt it or sit here and lie and try to do it. But for it to not be no produce in this Food for Less, and it seemed like a bulk store, but even for a bulk store, there's usually some produce. I found what I was looking for, which I wanted some more vegetables. But I found the sleepy time tea, which is what I was looking for, because I really want to relax and get some quality sleep and help. I had a burger earlier, and I really want to help it digest. So I got some chamomile mint tea. And I'll go back to the hotel to do my laundry, and this hotel, for it to be the most expensive, and you could tell that, again, higher end than the Super 8, more expensive than the Super 8, not necessarily, cleaner than the one in Collinsville, period. Not necessarily cleaner or as well kept as the old, dated motel in Yucca Valley, the High Desert Motel. And the shower didn't really work. But, the touches were newer, the decor was newer, the fixtures were newer. The washer and dryer newer. Then they got the job done. So, and then the hot breakfast was even more options than the one at the Super 8 in New Mexico. So it was worth a little bit of extra money. And again, it's not a review, and it was bigger. And it was a lot more employees here, probably managed by a lot of different people. I just bathed and washed up and sort of took a bath, actually, which actually wasn't that bad. Rather than calling them about switching rooms or figuring out, because it wasn't that I didn't know how to work the shower. In some hotels, you really got to figure out how to work the shower depending on how the lever is set up and all that stuff. No, like the water pressure was just low when you put the water, turned it on all the way, and then when you pulled the mechanism to engage the shower, it just did not work. So, but for the most part, it was clean. It was in good shape. One thing I will say, and none of these hotels had bed bugs, or at least none of the rooms I stayed in, because I did a thorough checking for just the proof of them. And but what I did take issue with was a lot of these motels, hotels, did not have mattress covers on the mattresses and box springs. Some of them didn't have box springs, but some did. And this La Quinta, especially to be a locally popular hangout spot, just seemed like a bad idea not to have those, because you could just save yourself a lot of time, money, and heartache just to get those, because you prevent. Anyway, so this La Quinta had box springs and did not have those bug-proof covers on the mattresses and box springs. And I just was like, okay, whatever. All right. But again, it was clean and it was comfortable. So that was my last day on the drive back. The drive back was beautiful. It got colder quick. And I was in prayer and reflecting. And most of this drive was in silence. So I did play some music. I did listen to some podcasts. But I want to say 75% of this drive, or 70-ish percent, 2/3 of this drive was in silence by choice. So my final drive home, as it got cold and as it got darker, another beautiful sunset I think I was in Indiana. Drove through Ohio. It was completely dark, but I've driven through Ohio several times. Nothing impressive. Nothing too different from being in Michigan, to be honest. So I'm reflecting, I'm praying, and I'm thinking about these things because I'm inspired to consider God and how I contend with natural forces, region, place, how I make meaning, how I may hold on to the past and the glory days or old ideas, how, just myself and my own region, my own city. I'm thinking about things I want to work on. I'm inspired to be creative in different ways. And as I'm thinking on that, praying about it, reflecting, I'm just blown away as I'm getting closer to home. Like, man, I really just took this trip. And the last thing I'll mention to wrap this up, because this is long, and I don't have nothing really to do, like I said, but I still have kind of like a wind down routine that I want to get started on. So, my final drive, yesterday. As I'm getting closer to home, I am feeling energized with what's ahead of me. Like, I'm not dreading coming home. I'm not thinking, oh, well, it's back to just the same old. No, I am feeling this new confidence and faith in what God is going to do because of what he had just done. Like, I just went on the road trip of a lifetime. And I can't even talk. This video is already so long, I can't even get in all the details. Like, there was a theme of just light and darkness when just thinking about natural daylight and highways and how they're lit up, and headlights, and how there was a whole theme of again, because I could talk more about the kind of my love of solitude and how not all of that is healthy. What else? There's just watching. I could talk about this trip for hours, and I will do some separate videos, like I said, about the logistics. But in reflecting, as I got closer, I was just filled with gratitude. Like, Lord God, you did that. You did that. I got to journal. I got to create some videos. I got to talk to you, hear from you. I got to face down fears and invitations to do alternate things. That I got to do all this stuff. Like, God really arranged this whole experience for me, and also to shift me into whatever He has next. And as I'm driving, and when I got to the Michigan state line, and we have like our huge pure Michigan sign, which I love. Even though when you go from Ohio to Michigan, one thing about it, the highway gets dark. Like Michigan said, we're going to turn them lights off because we want to save on the bill. It's all lit up in Ohio, and then it gets real dark. But the sign itself is just big and blue and beautiful. And when I saw it, I was just screaming like, I'm back. And when I crossed that state line, I felt a huge rush of gratitude flood through me like nothing I have ever felt before. I was completely overwhelmed with gratitude. It was like the trip, the culmination of it just kind of poured down on me. I was crying, not so bad that I couldn't see and drive, but I was overcome with gratitude and thankfulness. And for almost the whole drive home, which is not that long, maybe about an hour from the state line to my house, for about 30 minutes of it, I just was pouring my heart out to God in gratitude. And thanking Him for what's next, and accepting that He's gone before me. No matter the conditions of the road, no matter who I'm on the road with, the road of life, He has gone before me, and I can trust Him with whatever is next. And there is more. There's so much more. And today I talked to my cousin I share a birthday with. He's an older cousin on my dad's side. And he called me, to say happy birthday, to ask a little bit about my trip. He talked about how my granddad was a road trip person. He said something that my granddad used to say. And it reminded me that a part of this trip is my natural heritage as well. My granddad passed several years ago, around the holidays in December. And again, I'm younger than this cousin, and I remember a lot about my granddad, but I'm not a ton. And by the time I came around, my grandparents already had so many grandkids and great-grandkids that I don't think my granddad even remembered my name very confidently, because he called us all chicken. At some point, he would just call us chicken. Hey, chicken! And I thought it was just a cute thing he would do, but as I'm older, I realized he probably just could not keep up with all the names, especially of the youngers, because my dad was the youngest, so we are the youngest set of grandkids, even though we have one cousin younger than my little sister, who was the youngest of all the grandchildren. But then there's great-grands and great-great-grands. There's no great-great-great-grands yet. And my grandma is still alive, so she has great-great-grandchildren. There's a lot of us. But my granddad was a very interesting person. Very strong personality. And my cousin has a strong personality too. And when we were talking, he was saying how my granddad used to say, just pull off. Just pull off. Like when it's time to go, when it's time to hit the road. There's so many things that can have you lingering, whether it's family wanting to talk. And my granddad would just say, just pull off. Like driving is in me. And that's another thing that I'm reminded by the trip. I don't necessarily understand fully why, what it means, what its use is, but driving is in me. I love to drive, and I love long drives. And I was asking God why. To California and back. Why? I don't know for sure yet. But I'm not the only one. It's a big thing, especially in a country like America. It's a huge country. And without an elaborate train system to travel this country by land, you got to hit the road. And being from the Motor City, cars and the car industry just obviously has had a lot to do with that. Even as these highways have destroyed cities, cultures, neighborhoods, typically minorities who suffer the most in the development of these highways. And highways in this country have not always been safe for African Americans. That's a whole other thing right there too. But my granddad, who if he was alive, I guess he would be 95 now. He was a driver. He was a road tripper. And we have family in the South, Kansas City. My grandma has family in California. I don't know if they drove to California, but it's in me. I feel it in me. It's undeniable. It always calls me. It just always calls me. And I thank God for an experience to answer the call, not just the desire to hit the road, but to hit the road on a trip that he invited me on, that he orchestrated for me. So talking to my cousin was just like, it felt like a final stamp on the trip. To know that this was divine and it is also my DNA. And I can take these themes, these thoughts, these ponderings, and all of the ideas and curiosities that came with this trip. I can take it into what's next. So if you watch this, thank you for going on this journey with me. If you have thoughts, please share them. I don't think 2026 is the year where I'm going to be doing a lot of edited style content, but I am determined to do more content in general. So be on the lookout for maybe some shorts and other videos that break down different aspects of the trip, like I said, the logistics. But the bigger thing was a spiritual journey and just looking at what God has done and what we're trying to do as humans and what we just cannot do without him. Even when we do sort of show forth creative ingenuity, it all echoes his divine power and creativity. And that there's so much healing we need, and it's in him. So thank you for watching. Be on the lookout for more content. And I specifically want to encourage you, whatever journey God is inviting you on, go. Whatever aspect of yourself he's trying to tug on and grow you in or remind you of, lean into it and listen. Whatever uncomfortable thing is before you, stare it down in the name of Jesus. And if you don't know Jesus, you don't understand what I'm talking about, just to even see this whole trip with eyes of faith, receive him and get to know him. It is the journey of life to know Christ, and it is an eternal journey to know Christ. And when I say that, it has so many connotations in my heart and mind and soul because of my journey so far that you can't hear it, you can't see it. I can share with you a lot of these things, but I can't convey it all to you. But my prayer is that the Spirit and the power of God, based on my experience, would somehow hit your heart and inspire you to receive him and to go on your own journey with God through Christ Jesus. So stay blessed, y'all.